So, hey there, everyone. Happy Earth Day. This is Katy Hogan coming to you live from the Heartland, although we've been calling it live at home from home, given the pandemic. This is number 98 that we've been doing on Zoom. Missing the co-host Michael James because he's out riding around the country, figuring out what we should be doing. It being Earth Day and got one of our guests being directly related to the Ukraine situation that we're watching. We're going to be thinking about peace. So hence we came in with Peace Train performed by artists around the world, the Playing for Change bunch. And it was kicked off by Kebmo, who we normally open with. So there we go. So live from Chicago, another episode of Live from the Heartland. And this is the week of April 23rd. Welcome all of you. And today we're going to hear from Gabe Gonzalez, a neighbor and also an exec at the Sierra Club. Marge Halpern, a neighborhood, not a neighborhood, a city familiar face from Channel 9 and a lot of different activities that she's been part of as her business in political strategy has taken her very public at times. And we also have a new to me person, an artist, Ira Antelis of Sing for Ukraine and other events. So we will, without further ado, start it off. The good news this week, one of the good news, Sono Motors, a small German motor company, has partnered with the Munich Transportation Company to roll out solar-powered public transportation bus trailers. Normally powered by diesel, the reduction in fuel is expected to be about 2,500 liters per bus per year, as well as 6.5 metric tons of CO2 emission. This is Earth Day, people. This is Earth Month. And as we'll talk with Gabe, it's serious and we've got to figure out what we can do to make changes. Ukraine and the horribleness that we are seeing every day on the news is on all our minds. I was on the phone with my sister on Sunday morning to wish her happy Easter, and we both had NBC News on, and we both basically broke out in tears at the images that we were seeing simultaneously. I was glad to be talking to her while that was going on, as opposed to every other day when we see these images alone and sob. Feel pretty powerless in the face of it. So we'll see what our third guest talks about, what his efforts have made him feel, if they've made him feel a little less powerless. This week in COVID, masks on, masks off. Oops, back on again, maybe. I know from my point of view, I'm never going to ride CTA without a mask again. I'm also never going to get out on a plane without a mask again. Anyway, I think that what we really want to hear from today are our guests, but I'm going to just point out that there's a plant sale here in the neighborhood. The annual plant sale at Potawatomi Park is happening next Saturday, April 30th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. That's a really good deal, a great place to both pick up some plants for cheap and also bring some cuttings if you're so inclined, or bring your own extra plants. The other thing that's happening today, this afternoon, Saturday, April 23rd, not even this afternoon, starting at 10 a.m. is the Clean and Green citywide cleanup. In everyone's ward, there should be something going on. If you can't hook up with the aldermanic office, which will have rakes and brooms and whatever all, just take care of your own corner. Clear off the leaves from the sewer caps, let the water drain more easily. Get a recycling thing going in your building. Do what you can. Clean and Green is today, and let's see what we can figure out. Our first guest is going to be Gabe Gonzalez of Sierra Club. Hey, Gabe Gonzalez, my neighbor, my buddy, an organizer for many, many years, and somebody I thought I should call on Earth Day, given that he has been toiling in the fields of Sierra Club for a few years now.
I came to the Sierra Club. It's been 4 years as staff. I was a volunteer co-lead on the Ready for 100 campaign for 2 or 3 years before that. But I didn't come to the Sierra Club through like my deep connection to hiking and camping and stuff, because I'm a city boy for sure. I came because I'm just deeply, deeply concerned about the environment generally, issues of conservation and land, and obviously climate change. So that's how I got involved.
So let's talk about Earth Day 2022 and what we face. We've got this president who seems to be, reversing all of the really harmful policies environment-wise that the previous guy put in. Any observations on that process, or something that you're glad that changed, or you're hoping will get changed by this current president?
Yeah, it's when you and I were first talking about this, I was, I think you remember I was sort of hesitant because I want people on Earth Day. It's a 52nd Earth Day, I think 1970. So yeah, that was 52 years ago, believe it or not.
Yep. Exactly.
I want folks to celebrate the Earth and to think about like what they love about it. Get out. It's a little rainy here today, but like maybe get out, walk around a little bit, see what there is to see as spring comes along. But I would be remiss if I wasn't serious about the challenges that we face right now. So the Biden administration has done a whole lot to reverse some of the worst successes of the previous administration. And we're very, very grateful for that. But there's a long way to go. And I think there's also some sort of knee-jerk reactions on some things that just show how deeply ingrained fossil fuels and the burning of carbon for energy is in our society. Yeah. So a really good example of that, and you had mentioned that you got this in the mail. One of Biden's responses to the Ukraine war was to release petroleum reserves, right? And that's, I think, partly about Russian oil, but frankly, we don't really import any Russian oil, or very, very little. So the effect that has, releasing petroleum reserves, what the effect that has on Americans is minimal. What that was really about was about people complaining that their gasoline was too high. And we think, rather than releasing more environmentally destroying petroleum, what we really ought to be doing is doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on investments in renewable energy. And I don't want to present it as all bad. I think what we learned from that is that, there's a long way to go in terms of how people think about the environment, and how they think about conservation, and how they think about what we need to do to save the planet for human beings.
When you're talking renewable energy, I feel guilty, frankly. Every time I open my mailbox and I've got one of those letters from somebody who says, hey, I can give you electric for better, cleaner energy, et cetera.
Yeah.
And honest to God, the fact that they're going to use the same mode of transport as ComEd has used to get me my energy, I'm getting too old to change and have there be results that would be unfavorable to me. For example, higher cost, or figuring things out that I'm not really up for figuring out. So I feel guilty about that. But I also know of a local developer right here in our neighborhood who is putting together an incredibly green, sustainable development in her 6 flat using geothermal.
Mm-hmm.
She has dug 2 geothermal right here in the hood. Plus, we've got Loyola University, who has an entire department of sustainability, which we should have them on this radio show since it's Loyola. So how do people hook up in their own little lives on making things better? What's each of our contribution, I guess?
first off, we need to be realistic and recognize that the way we're really going to solve most of these things is not on the individual level. It is at the state, the county, in the case of a big city like Chicago, but also at the federal level. Like that's where the policies that are going to get enacted that really get us to where we need to be. So the IPCC, the UN body that measures climate change, they've been very, very clear that that the Earth's temperature is rising and that we need to make sure to cap it at 1.5 degrees Celsius. That if we want to make sure that the absolute worst of disasters don't happen. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a whole lot for the Earth's temperature to rise. And to be honest, in order to do that, we have to make some major changes in the way we get energy and the way we use energy. We have to invest deeply and heavily in renewable energy and away from fossil fuels right now. We have almost no time. Every quarter, a new report comes out, and every quarter it gets a little worse. And we need to support things that do things like electrify our transportation industry, that give the same incentives for electric cars that they do for the petroleum industry. Because the petroleum industry and fracking and even coal are heavily subsidized industries in the United States.
Yep.
And we need to remove those subsidies, and we need to give those subsidies, if necessary, to people that produce renewable energy and forms of renewable things like cars and houses that use renewable energy in a way that would benefit us all. So that's a big deal.
Yeah.
The same is true at the state level. So we've got Sierra Club is very, very proud of our Illinois chapter. Jack Barron, the executive director, and I talk on a regular basis. We think the work that the Illinois chapter has done, and I'm totally serious about this, like it is a model for the rest of the country in a lot of ways in terms of the work that they're able to do. We think very, very highly of them. And everyone, some of the smaller chapters are the ones that maybe, they sort of like to hear Illinois. They're like, well, that's not fair to compare us to Illinois. And it's like, no, we think it's fair. You should be that good too. But it's kind of, so here's the thing about what we could do. So the first thing you can do is you could support those kind of laws. Anything that, and in particular, there are three areas that I would draw people's attention to. One is things that get us away from fossil fuels. So like I said, in particular, those subsidies, I'm looking up a thing I got here right now because I want to get this bill number right. Mm-hmm. Anything that takes away some of those subsidies from the fossil fuel industry, it would be really important. The second one is anything that promotes clean transportation. So, and the reason I picked those two is because those are the number 1 and 2 carbon emitters in the United States, is where we get our energy for things like heating and electricity in our houses from, and transportation. Those are the two biggest sources of carbon emissions in the United States. And so our ability to change that and to make those come from renewable energy is going to go a long way towards ensuring a better future for all of us. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say, we have been told from time, probably since there was an Earth Day, probably since before there was an Earth Day, that a lot of the ways that we're going to solve our climate or environmental problems is on a personal level. So like, I don't know if I was thinking about this because it's Earth Day today. Remember the ad with the Native American who's like looking at all the pollution, and then he's got the tear coming down his face, right?
Yes.
And, I think we were told early on that personal choices could make a difference. But at the same time, we were told that personal choices could make a difference. Single-use plastics were being shoved down our throats by industry that knew that this was a cheaper way to deliver a good and a better way to get profits out of it. We were being all sold SUVs and larger automobiles that used more and more gasoline. The list goes on and on. So there is, and I don't want to downplay this. There are things that we should do, but the things that we should do most often involve us getting involved in our communities and getting organized, and much less whether you're going to switch from ComEd to a solar or a renewable energy
Mhm.
company. Not that you shouldn't do that. If you have the chance and the means, you should absolutely do that. You know, in our house, we're trying to get away from plastics as much as possible. So the smallest thing, like what brand of cat litter we buy, we get the ones
Yeah.
that come in a cardboard box, right? And all of that matters. And we're conscious about the energy that we use. And we are thinking about getting a heat pump for the house, which is an investment. Reason we're looking at that is because we already checked out solar and there's too many trees here, so we can't really get
Yeah.
solar. But then they said, would you consider cutting down one of the trees? No, we would not. But the most important thing that I think we can do as individuals is organize and fight against the policies that hurt us and fight for the policies that are going to help us.
Can I just,
Yeah.
can I say one thing? It's talking about that policy. I've been sort of ranting about this since I found out. So a couple of years ago, Chicago finally passed a plastic bag law, right? That means you have to pay 7 cents if you don't bring your own bag to bag your groceries, which I thought, great, less plastic bags hanging from trees and blowing up the alley and all that. Okay, so normally I bring my own bag, and sometimes I forget and I ask for a paper bag for my groceries. Do you know how much they charge for a recyclable paper bag at that same grocer? 25 cents. And it's only 7 cents for the utterly unrecyclable, ugly piece of what that blows up our streets, et cetera, 7 cents. So to me, that's like a local thing that I'm hoping to enrage some other people about, and just bang on the doors of City Hall and say, at least stop charging for recyclable paper bags. If not, just transfer it to the plastic bags, make them be 25 cents.
Well, that's a good example of the sort of thing we're talking about, right? Like, how do you use things like a bag tax to change people's behavior?
Right.
Right. And to lean into things like paper bags, or, being really thoughtful about carrying your own. Like, we got a couple of these like collapsible crates that we use when we go to the grocery store. And especially, because we got the little boy at the house, when we're buying a week's worth of groceries, it's quite a bit. And they'll say, do you want bags? And we say no. And they look at us like we're bananas. But, we just go out and fill up these crates that are sitting in the back of our car. But we have to be thoughtful about it. Yeah. It's
I'm
true.
upset about how behind Chicago is on everything. When I was traveling in California 30 years ago, they were ahead of us on recycling.
Yeah.
And so many other places are ahead of us. When I throw these single-use plastics, which I still bring into my house, unfortunately, because I'm only one and you get small portions, and
Right.
into my recycling bin, it's like wish cycling. It's not going to wind up recycled, not with our lack of system here. So nationally, in your work is as you just said, the national organization and beyond, and internet, we have already climate refugees all over the world, right?
In the United States.
And in the US. And given what you just said, we also have now a class of folks here in the States who are, barricading themselves with their rifles, et cetera, who will look at people coming at the Great Lakes and our fresh water and our systems that still work, et cetera, and, as invaders, if you will, even though they're whatever. I don't even know what the question is here, except that that's what comes into my mind when I think of, we are in the place. And my good friends who have a camp up in UP, who live in the Upper Peninsula now, when COVID hit, they got inundated with people from downstate Michigan and also Wisconsin and Illinois coming up there to escape, wearing masks and being freaked out about being in crowds, et cetera, et cetera. But they created a crowd up there in places that weren't ready to handle it, like the hiking trails that don't have more than one bathroom, et cetera, et cetera. So now I'm talking too much. And I just look at it all. And, I, like you said, in my individual life, I donated my car like 2 or 3 years ago. And that makes me feel very good. that I'm not adding to that mess. But I honestly did it because of the cost and because you can't park in our neighborhood. And I live right near the train. It's right there. And I love public transportation, but public transportation has suddenly gotten unsafe for some people, older people especially, who, you know, can't punch somebody in the face or run away. And so, again, you know, starting with when we managed to elect a bunch of gas guys, oilmen from Texas, who stopped giving any money or any support to, say, Amtrak as a system. And now we're stuck with a system that it needs major overhaul, as far as I can understand. The track beds and all that are systemically kind of, what's the word, obsolete for newer equipment. But we're America. Why can't we have a train system that runs as well as the ones in Europe do? Sorry,
Well, we could.
I'm just ranting at you, Gabe.
So on the first point you made, like, this is actually where we are spending increasing time thinking about at Sierra Club. So yes, I was at a small gathering of some folks who work on immigration the other day, because, you know, that was prior to me working on climate. I spent a lot of time in the immigration field, and they're all very clear that the interplay between climate and immigration is super clear. It's at the bottom of this. You know, when folks have recognized the situation on our border right now with so many Central American as opposed to Mexican refugees, those are climate refugees. So people look at it and they think, oh, those folks are fleeing gangs, or, you know, those are failed states and people are running away from lawlessness. But that, and which is true on the surface, but that lawlessness was created when drought hit those countries and forced farmers off the land where they could make enough money and make enough food to live, into cities where they didn't know anybody and they were easy prey for organized crime. And so now those same people who don't want to live in a in a barrio controlled by gangs or cartels are moving north in search of a better life, which is frankly what everybody's ancestors here did, including Native Americans and First Nations people. They also came across the Bering Straits looking for opportunity and a better life. So this is the story of America, all of the Americas, in the United States. People migrate to where there's opportunity, but that is happening because of climate, and that will continue. So then what do you do about it, right? So there's that. The second thing you mentioned is one of the things we need to think of very thoughtfully, because climate crisis requires one thing more than any, and that is community. So FEMA, a number of years ago, did a study looking at climate disasters in the United States, and they came up with a set of indicators for your ability to weather a climate disaster, basically survive, but also rebuild successfully. And the number one indicator of whether you would survive a climate disaster was, do you know your neighbor? That was the number one indicator. And so you can sort of take that.
I'm just getting my coffee over here.
Okay.
I'm still here.
That sort of core idea and expand it across the whole area. To the extent that we've got a well-organized community is the extent that we can take care of each other. Which brings us to the third point you made. And this is the difficult one, is that people then have I would call it a moral choice to make, which is you can organize to try and protect and to hoard what you have.
Yeah.
Or you can organize to weather change collectively.
Together, right.
Together. And obviously, I think the second one is a much better bet in the long run.
And the only sustainable one, right?
The only sustainable one. Yeah. Otherwise, you just end up in a bunch of like
warring
Mad Max, sort of ugly scenarios. And I don't see anybody coming out on top of that ever.
Right.
You know, like people look back on things like feudal states in the Dark Ages and they think, oh, what a romantic time. I don't think it was so romantic for about 90% of the people, maybe 95. I think it was pretty bad time.
Yeah.
And then that to the where you extrapolated from, I think is also right. Like, so we need to spend time and energy getting organized as a community, getting to know our neighbors, getting to build relationships across our plots of land or our hallways or whatever we might live on. But also, I think looking at these policies, I wanted to name one. So here's a good example. So this is something that Jack and the folks at Chicago Sierra Club are working on right now. And it's about environmental justice specifically. So there is, interestingly, in the IEPA, which is one of these standards that something that Sierra Club and a lot of other folks worked on to win the Illinois Environmental Protection Act. There's not a specific definition of environmental justice. And so there's a bill, it's already passed the House. Let me give you the Senate name and maybe we can like put this in the chat or something. It's SB 2906 for environmental justice permitting in Illinois. It gives, it defines and it allows for, what's the word I want to use? The ability to take action. There's a fancier word that I can't think of right now. Around issues of environmental justice in the communities. And it focuses on this question of permitting, but really it's about giving people the tools to fight back when folks are polluting or destroying the environment around them. So it's SB 2906.
And that's moving through the Illinois Senate right now?
It is. Well, it's going to come up in the veto session. And if folks want to talk to their senators, they should do so. And I was thinking about this too when we were talking, because I knew we were going to talk, and I was thinking, well, is there things that we could ask our representative or our state rep or our state senators to support? And I'm like, they're probably all on it, which doesn't mean we shouldn't talk to them about it.
No, it supports them if they're doing the good work for them to be able to say, do you know how many calls I got from constituents?
That's exactly right.
It's what we always preach on this show is please stay in touch, even if it's simply to say, thanks for doing the right thing, Congresswoman, or thanks for being there for the justice hearings, Senator Durbin, et cetera. I mean, we should be always telling them what they're missing as well as what they're seemingly doing right, because
and the thanks can matter a lot because they rarely get that. And so that is like really important to let them know. And I was thinking, we're very lucky that we have the representation that we do. And then I was like, you know what, I'm going to take that back. We're not lucky.
No,
we have the representatives that we fought for. That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, so in that sense, I guess we're all lucky that we all found each other. But SB 2906, this environmental justice permitting bill would be important. It's something that folks can do locally.
This week earlier, you said something about that, which leads to what you were just saying. I think we should probably finish on the notion of resilience, right?
Yeah.
What do you?
I mean, that goes back to this question of knowing our neighbors and thinking about the future and taking little steps, like thinking about, maybe growing some of your own food. It's cheaper, it's better for you, tastes good, and it puts less strain on the system.
Right.
Thinking about ways that we can individually and collectively face what's coming, not from a place of fear, but a place of strength, that we can be resilient and that we can together meet the challenges that are coming our way. I think a lot about, there's a couple of poems that come to my mind when I think about this stuff. There's one in particular from an Illinoisan, Carl Sandburg. Hope is a tattered flag and a dream of time. And I think, I like to think about the time that we have and what we're going to do with it and how we get more of it. And I think the way we get more of it is through this concept of resilience and working together.
Gabe Gonzalez, the man who is National Chief of Staff for Sierra Club nationally, but also a very resilient, neighborly guy right here, a few blocks from me. Bless you, and everything you just said, your lips to, Gaia's ears, whatever, let it be. And
Thank you.
thanks for joining us for this Earth Day, just marking of Earth Day.
So looking forward. It was so good to see you. And I look forward to seeing you for many Earth Days to come. Have a good one.
Peace out, my brother. Thank you. Hey, and we are back with Marge Halpern, who suggested that great song by Queen. Thank you.
Gotta have that energy. We're not going to make it through to November.
True that. Everyone, you may recognize Marge Halpern. She's been on Channel 9 for years as the voice of reason in an extremely now civil exchange with Chris Roebling, each of you representing either one party or the other. You were obviously representing the Dems. He was representing the Republicans, and you could actually speak to each other nicely and interestingly and intelligently. And I don't know if you still do that gig. Do they just call you up at election time?
Yeah, but sadly, the reason it stopped is because it was becoming impossible to be civil.
So earlier this week, I attended a meeting that you co-hosted with the great Katy, who was a student on the program I used to teach on years ago. And that was the Indivisible Chicago Alliance that brought that forth, right?
Right.
Could you talk to people about it? It was called the Campaign Kickoff, and it featured our Congresswoman, Jan Schakowsky, who's always a positive face and voice. Talk about what that meant to do and how you perceived it when it was done.
Well, we run our own campaign. The candidates have campaigns. The Democratic Party of Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, nationally, they all run their own campaigns. And now, as a grassroots force, Indivisible Chicago and Swing Left and a lot of partners around the country, we run our own campaign. This is a layer of field work that did not exist in 2016, and we failed to win at that time because the grassroots wasn't mobilized. This is why we won 4 years later, and why we continue to win through midterms, and why we will win again this November if we do the work. That's what it takes. So we launched our campaign. Indivisible Chicago Alliance represents chapters and members throughout the Chicago area. And we mobilized in 2020 the largest out-of-state phone banks in Wisconsin and Michigan. We made something like 600,000 phone calls, 1.5 million texts. We sent postcards, millions of postcards around the country, because after our local Midwest blue wall states, we then targeted key states around the country and continue to send them. So we from Chicago, we sit in this place at the foot of the blue wall, right? We have our strong blue state. It can be stronger, and it needs to be stronger this year for sure. If we're going to get Lauren Underwood back into Congress and elect progressives in the 3rd district and the 7th district, where Indivisible Chicago supports Keena Collins. In the 3rd, we're supporting Adelia Ramirez. And at any rate, but then we look to our neighbors. Wherever you live in the Chicago area, you're about an hour from either Wisconsin or Michigan, and you need to get over there and do the work. Yes. We can canvass there in communities. Ron Johnson, as Ben Wickler of the Wisconsin State Democratic Party told us on our show the other night, Ron Johnson is the most vulnerable senator in the country.
Yeah.
We can get him out.
So good to hear. That was good to hear.
That was a high point of the show. Yeah. And for those who didn't join us Monday night in our kickoff, it is on our Facebook. Indivisible Chicago's Facebook page. So please find us there and watch it. So we had about 400 people watch that so far. It's still running online. Okay. But what we need is signups. We need people to canvass, come with us to Wisconsin. We're not canvassing in Michigan on the ground yet. Right now, we're canvassing for Delia Ramirez and Kina Collins because they have primary races June 28th. Our primary is in June now, no longer, or at least for this year, it is not the old February, March cycle. So we need to get out there because we need more progressives in office. We need, then we'll move to expand after the primary here. We'll add Lauren Underwood, who doesn't have a primary race in Illinois, and move more extensively into Wisconsin and Michigan. So we have this 3-state strategy. We are the ones here in Chicago who have the bandwidth to support those states. And we also noted, I warned you, you start me up and I'm not going to stop, but we also have governor's races in all 3 states.
Yeah.
You watch TV, you've seen Richard Irvin. He's bankrolled by Ken Griffin, who wants to buy himself another governor. The last one he bought, Bruce Rauner.
Almost bankrupted us right out the door.
We're still paying the price of Bruce Rauner. In that sense, COVID relief kind of boosted the state. That's the only silver lining there. But we're still in some trouble, even though our bond rating is going up a little. But repairing the damage from Ken Griffin, we can't afford to lose to him again and let him buy another governor. So Pritzker is doing great, but we need to support him and get out there and make sure he's reelected. And in both Wisconsin and Michigan, those Democratic governors are the only hurdle stopping state legislatures controlled by Republicans.
Right. And we all know
that veto power and that final authority to sign or veto bills, those states are lost to us. They might as well be Florida.
And those, because those states are also states, thanks to what you just described, the Republican legislators are states that would in a minute pass voter suppression bills out the wazoo. We saw them threaten the voting results in Michigan last time around. And you have a Michigan background, am I right?
I'm from Detroit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Born in Detroit.
And I heard you say something the other night that really tickled me about what used to be the big 3 in Michigan was, Ford, General Motors, and what, Chrysler? Yeah. Who are the big 3 in Michigan now?
Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State, Dana Nessel, the Attorney General, and of course, Gretchen Whitmer. So, the governor. And so it's so great that 3 powerful Democratic women are stopping the state legislature. But I want to be clear, without them, yes, they would pass more voter suppression bills, but both states have managed to pass more bills than we want. They're not, they're not totally denying people of color the right to vote, but they're working on it. And targeting districts, Michigan has the court support for a fair map, but Wisconsin doesn't, and not in the same way anyway. They both had some favorable court rulings, but so at any rate, believe me, they have limited access to the ballot box for November. Absolutely. So we're working with groups like Block in Milwaukee, which is Black-led in the communities where we really need to turn people out. Our partner that we had on our launch on Monday was from statewide Indivisible Michigan, which is coordinating efforts in Detroit and elsewhere around the state to bring out Democratic voters, particularly voters of color. A group, Soul, we work with in Milwaukee also. Souls to the polls is their mantra, and we support them to drive people to the polls. There's a lot of work to do if we're going to organize around the legislation that has been passed in both states.
But let's bring it closer to home right here in Chicago. We've got a couple things that I'm wondering about the process on. One of them is the new ward map, which is in play right now. And the other one is the casinos. I know that you have strong feelings about casinos, for example. Will you talk to us about where we are with that? Because clearly we're going to get a casino, which was never something I wanted in Chicago. I feel like it declasses us in some way. It brings us down, but we're going to get one. So where are we at in that whole process, if you don't mind just
Yeah,
going that
I
way?
certainly don't. I live in the South Loop. I often have said where I live we would be the meat in a development sandwich if both the 78 and the One Central project are allowed to go forward. I'll carve out the One Central for just a minute because it is so ridiculous and so under the radar that the more people need to understand what's happening there. It literally in the dead of night, at the end of a long Springfield debate to close out the session in 2019, that would be the fall of 2019 before COVID hit, which helped bury it. The legislature approved a $6.5 billion, that's a B, state subsidy for One Central, which the developer owns the air rights over the metro tracks. So they have to build a platform over the tracks and then they can build on that property. So they're talking about a 7-story platform to clear the trains and the tracks. Then on top of that, they want to build 9 skyscrapers. They want to extend the downtown skyline. They alternately claim it's a major South Side development because it's, south of Roosevelt, but I don't think you can't be both downtown skyline and South Side development. So, they're playing it both ways, but through COVID, they've been able to really advance their cause because there hasn't been great public input. There was a Zoom town hall, it's not the same because you don't have everybody in the room. The energy is taken out of it. And also this administration is not transparent about public input. They don't like public input any more than Rahm did or any other prior mayor, really. Ironically, I think Daley did a better job with public input.
Interesting.
Because he understood the pressure on aldermen and he supported his aldermen. And neither Rahm nor Lightfoot cared so much about.
What can Chicagoans who want to have input in this, do you think, what is the best route for us to
There's
activate?
a casinos at cityofchicago.org that you can write and give your opinion. The problem, I am increasingly convinced, is that this process is backwards. In what world do you go to developers and say, who has land where you'd like to put a cash cow of a casino on it? Instead of, as we did with, say, the Harold Washington Library, the Tribune Tower, a century ago. The true tradition is, here's where we want it. Who wants to build it? There's this idea that the opposition is NIMBY. And I so resent that. And I went to all 3 of the hearings and all 3 of the final sites. The third one is River North. And property values was mentioned more on stage than in the community speakers, because the mayor and the developers want to dismiss our concerns. They want to put us in they're only worried about your property values, when in fact, there was deep concern about environmental impact, about economic impact. Gaming, it's documented that it does not deliver the revenue promised. What are we going to do about that when we've destroyed a whole community and not got the revenue we needed?
So we're going to have to come back to you on that as it gets developed. I was called on you because of your involvement with the campaign kickoff the other day, but I think we should visit with you a couple more times before November comes around. Do you mind doing that with us?
I'd be happy to. And in the meantime, indivisiblechicago.com is where you can sign up to join our phone banks and our canvases and our texting team. We will train you. Doesn't matter if you know how to do it. Don't worry, our training has been complimented as one of the best in the country.
And I want to amen to that and say these are excellent people for y'all to work with. So let's get to it. Thank you so much, Marge, for joining us today. I really appreciate you giving us your time. Thank you
for listening.
So please send help today. We sing for Ukraine, all together, one forever. We sing for Ukraine. Raise your voices, never let up. From Kharkiv to...
So that was a beautiful song, and we're going to hear what that's about from our third guest, Ira Antelas. Did I say that right?
Antelas, yeah. Antelas.
Ira came to us thanks to, again, Lynn Orman Weiss, our music and cultural attaché producer. She's known about you for a while and has spoken of you before. You are your starting place work-wise was basically advertising, music for advertising, jingles, as
Yes,
people used to call.
that sort of as a struggling songwriter, unable to make a living. So I was teaching, and my sister's best friend's father, if you follow that, had a recording studio in New York. And during the day, they would do like commercials, and at that time at night, they would do like live music because you didn't have synthesizers or anything like that. And one day she said, "He'll meet with you." This is my sister's friend's father, and he said, I played him some of my music, and he said, "I'll introduce you to a man named Sid Wallachin, who at the time he was responsible for "You Deserve a Break Today" at McDonald's. Everybody knows that. That's like the most famous jingle. And I begged him to let me have a job, because I was somewhat desperate. And he taught me commercials and how to write them, and that's how I began. And then I came to Chicago, and everybody knew him. So there was a thriving scene here, and everybody would meet with me because they knew who I worked for. And that's how I ended up here and worked here.
We love Chicago for that.
Yeah.
So you have really, I think, captured hearts with this array of artists that are, you can give people the address where they can find it, but it's basically We Sing for Ukraine. You're
Correct.
asking people simply to make a dollar
Correct.
minimum donation when they see and hear these artists singing for Ukraine, which all of us feel a lot of helplessness.
Helplessness, yes.
In the last month, now it's up to, I think, 50 days that this unprovoked assault has been occurring, and it's breaking our hearts. And you figured out something to do. Please describe for folks what We Sing for Ukraine, how it arose and how it has evolved, because I know you've really moved a far field with it, different cities, etc.
Yeah, I think the thing about that age might teach some people more than others is do what you know how to do. And so I realized, well, as I'm watching this charity unfold, and the parallel to it is I'm working on this concert of music from the Holocaust, which we could discuss later. And I'm like, this is like a replay in some ways of what happened back then, even today, mass graves and things like that. So I'm like, well, I know they need help. I know they need financial help. What could I do that could make an impact? And the idea was, as a songwriter, producer, and somebody who knows a lot of people, I thought, well, I could write the song, and then I could maybe get some of the best singers in Chicago. And knowing that we had a Ukrainian population here too, the thought was, wow, okay, if I write a song and I can have Ukrainian singers and Chicago singers come together and sing it together, that would be step one. And then the thought would be, maybe we go to different cities and do different versions of the same song. So it's not really We Are the World with celebrities, but it might be an updated social media version of it. And
It's even better because we saw all these familiar faces in the Chicago one.
Yeah. Oh no, it was
like Joni Pilato and Lynn Jordan and I'm forgetting Nick
Tremulous.
Tremulous, yeah.
These are my friends. The thing, I've been working with them for 30, 35 years.
Yeah.
And many times, like I know them all well. And so when I call them, they know usually it's legitimate and they'll help. And it was quite moving. It was a very tearful evening, the first night we did it. And we videoed it. And we had the Ukrainian singers, one who had just gotten here from Kyiv. Olha, I'm not going to pronounce her last name because I'll mess it up. And her son, and I'm like, oh wow, I want to keep doing this. And the attention the video got, and you could just see people yearning to do something. And my thought is, let's just raise a little money. I'm not going to raise millions upon millions of dollars, but we can help. And everybody, I think, who participated felt they were helping. And that's was the idea.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, then I called people in New York and LA and people I know who I work with. I said, here's the idea. And some of them called me back within a day and said, I have 30 singers in New York. Let's go. And I have 30 singers in LA, or I have 25 in Nashville. Like in days, like I said, I'm there. If you, or Houston, whatever it was, I said, if you find the people, I'll come and we'll do it.
That's
That's
fabulous. So,
actually, I'm sorry I have to interrupt, but maybe the other part is Ben Vereen, a very well-known actor. He's on the sitcom, is a really good friend of mine. So he came to New York. He was in New York. He did the New York version with Miguel Cervantes, who plays the role of Hamilton
right.
in Hamilton. But Ben has really taken this to another level. And he was on the CBS Morning News this morning talking about We Sing for Ukraine. And he was also Fox. So he's like really promoting it.
Oh, very good. I know we're going to talk about the Holocaust remembering that's coming up, but just before we do, we're going to close with some of the music, some more of the music, particularly the kids from Lviv singing. Can you please direct our listeners where they can find this on the web?
Yes, it's actually pretty simple. So the website is actually called We Sing for Ukraine, just one word.com.
Mm-hmm.
And on that website, there are videos on the homepage. I think those are like the Nashville video, the Ben Vereen video from New York.
Right.
And then there's a page called The World Sings for Ukraine. And we've had choirs, we've had individuals from South Carolina and Florida. So if you go to The World Sings, it's everybody. You can see all the individual variations. A really good friend of mine, Justin Gesso, who was just on the song contest on NBC the other day, he did a version. So there's been multiple versions and people go and they listen to them.
So in that, people will also be directed how they can donate.
Yeah. So if you go to the website, the first thing you see is donate $1 to either Abundance International or UNICEF.
Right. So, okay. Tell us about quickly, because we're running out of time. This week, Tuesday, April 26th. Right. What's happening?
So I'm Jewish, and when Elie Wiesel died, I thought to myself, this is 4 years ago, I'm like, Elie Wiesel was the voice of the Holocaust for many of us. And it dawned on me that who would take over that mantle? And upon reading more about Elie Wiesel, I read that he loved music, and he actually had written the foreword to a songbook of songs from the Holocaust. Now, I've been a music producer and composer for 40 years in writing in every style imaginable. And it dumbfounded me that there was music from the Holocaust that I had no idea about. I'm like,
it dumbfounds me too.
So I found the songbook. It was called We Are Here. And I'm like, we're going to perform songs from the songbook. And I had planned the concert. We started to raise some money to do it. And the pandemic hit, and we couldn't do it. Mm. So 2 years later, David Mendelsohn, who I brought on as my producer, said, quote, let's get the band back together. And to be honest, I hadn't really been thinking about it. So I had to really refresh my memory, and I had all this documentation. And when I went online to reread some things, one time it said the 14 songbooks of the Holocaust. And there was an article written, and I read the article by Brett Werb from the Holocaust Museum. He's the musicologist. And the light went on. I'm like, bingo. I'm going to find these 14 songbooks, and we're going to do a song from every songbook. And we're going to talk about the publisher of the songbook, the writer of the song, and the meaning of the song. And that became the structure of the concert. So this Tuesday, we're going to do it. And it will be, I always say, the most important project of my life.
Gosh, that kind of gives me chills.
Yeah, I mean, I just tell people, I get choked up talking about it.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so this Tuesday at Temple Shalom, which is on Lakeshore Drive 3480.
I think it's 3480. And it's like, if you've ever been there, it's for everybody because Lynn Jordan's going to sing, Cheryl Wilson. The space is magnificent. It's over 100 years old, and it's this big. It's almost like a concert venue. It's just this big open space, and it's beautiful. And we have a choir. We've got some of the top talent here, and it will be one of the more memorable evenings. I think.
Wow. Congratulations in advance for pulling that off. It's going to be huge. And you're right. At least for this year, it's probably the most important thing that you've done so far in your life.
I mean, the Ukraine thing's important too, but for me personally, and as I talk, when I grew up, the reason I knew a little bit more about the Holocaust is two of my closest friends' parents were in the camps, and I knew the parents, but I never really knew the story. So I dedicated the concert from me to my friends' parents who are no longer alive.
Okay, it's really beautiful. Okay, we're gonna go out with the kids singing. Is there anything you want to say about that?
Quick story. So I have to say this because we all live in Chicago and we all know about Ukrainian Village, and it was just the name for me, Ukrainian Village. I'd go eat there, and then I started to work and meet the people from Ukraine. Many of them were here, and to say that they are wonderful people is an understatement. They really, really are. And a couple of the singers that I've gotten to know who sang on the original session, I kept saying it would be really, really good to get somebody or in Ukraine to sing this song as we're trying to raise money, social media. And one of the girls, Marta, said, I'll get that happening. I'll do that. And I don't know, 3 weeks later, she sends me this video. She said, these are the kids from Lviv singing your song. And they did the video. And to me, there's no best, but that's the version. To hear these kids in the middle of the war-torn country sing this. And they put a video together that people were like, and
with flowers in their hair. I mean,
yeah, I just like unbelievable. And I'm like, if you can't donate $1 listening to this, I don't know what else we could do.
Ira, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
It's really our honor to have you and to share the news of all the things you're doing and involved with. And shine on. I appreciate it. Shine
my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, be good.
All right. And we will be right back. You are listening to Live from the Heartland, Heartland at Home on our Earth Day celebration. We'll be right back after this music.
Усі разом ми єдині, для України заспівай, стіймаймо голос без зупину, від Харкова до Львова, з Києва до Одеси.
Wow. Well, thanks for listening to this show. It was nice to visit again. Michael will be back next week. I'm still doing a hiatus from the radio so that we can do some writing. For over 25 years, Live from the Heartland has come to you, usually from the studio, but now from home. We are archived at our channel at youtube.com/heartlandmedia. And we also are on Spotify and Google Podcasts. Just type in Live from the Heartland. And we are also cablecast sometimes at Can TV, channel 27. We want to thank our team, which includes Emilio Davis, Lynn Orman Weiss, every once in a while myself, and of course the podcast director, Gwen Brown. We're going out with, I think, Benny King. But do good in the world. The world needs all the good that we do. All power to the people. Peace and blessings. Be well. Let's save the earth and all its beings.